15 days once. So you want to see what is the changes. So in that, instead of using histogram we cannot use it in that case. It's better to use the line chart. You see what is the baseline, what is the after 2 weeks, 8. So you can see this in the range. You can visually, graphically, you can represent, you can understand easily and effectively. So when you want to say it again, when you want to use the categorical variables or nominal ordinal variables, better to use bar chart and pie chart, because we're going to use frequencies. But if you want to use continuous variables, where you can use this histogram, line graph, and this plot chart. The third one, I want to look at. I mean, everyone wants. I want you to look at this one, how they presented the data. The first, they have the dot. They were. I mean, they're using this A. They put the difference. I mean, I don't know what is the y-axis, and also we doesn't understand what is the x-axis. So it is, we may not understand based on this graph what they want to trying to communicate. And also they use two different types of plot within the single graphs. So this is, we should avoid such things when you're presenting your data. So the two different variables, two different data has been presented, in a different way in a single graph, without the what is the values, what is the captions for the x-axis and y-axis. And also, if you see the another bar graph here, the gender difference, male and female, I think they presented in percentage. It's very, very important when you present a percentage, your y-axis, the percentage is 100%. So it should, reach the 100%, not just, 60%. So this will mislead, your data presentation, your, articles or your paper. So this is, this is the wrong way of, improper way of, presenting your data. What is the best way? Suppose if you see this one on the left side, the time of as result of injury in rugby league. See, they have, the time off between, frequency. They had a ordinal data presented in less than 1 week, 1 to 2 weeks. So they were ordered in different weeks. Then put the frequency here. So this is how, best way you can, you can present your data. Another best way, what recently witnessing in our research articles, how you present your correlation coefficients. It's very way different way you present your data, how this the correlation coefficients presentation of presenting your Pearson correlation coefficients. This is the some of the examples way in which the best way you can present your we always observe some changes, some important things. It's a error bar. We often observe European grouping. But this error bar, they use the standard deviations and standard error and the 95% confidence intervals. So what is advisable when you present, when you're presenting your data based on your interventions between two groups, comparative and the or control group and experimental groups. Whereas we should not actually hear what this error bar, how do they make? They use two standard deviations. The mean, this is the mean, this is the mean, it's like a 10 plus or minus two standard deviations. So when the standard deviation is going to tell you the dispersion of your data within the your So this is not going to add any value if you just put the standard deviations when you're comparing between two groups. So we must not use, when you're comparing between the two groups, we must not use standard deviations here, right? Okay. Second one, they use the error bar as a standard error, right? One standard error. So see, usually when you have, standard error, if you have a larger sample size, the standard error will be very, very narrow, right? The standard error is the standard deviation by root n. So when you have a larger sample size, you have this standard very narrow, single standard error. Again, when you want to compare, when you want to compare between the two groups, the effectiveness of the intervention between the two groups, we must not use one standard error as its error bar. Rather, you must use two standard right? Like this. I think two standard deviation is equal to your 95% confidence interval. I think if you calculate your confidence interval, it is, if it's a 95% confidence interval, it is 1.96 plus or minus your standard error. That is standard deviation divided by root n, right? So we must use two standard error, right? So for your comparative study between experimental and I want to point here. You can see this, the dots lines here. Let me take um, some different color. When you take this one, sorry, okay, sorry, okay. When you take this line, right, this is your upper limit, this is a lower limit, the error bar, stone standard error, and also error bar is upper limit, this is lower limit. When you see this one, you can able to identify, is there any statistical significant difference between this group? If this error bar, overlaps, right? Statistical significant difference between, this group, right? So that is how you can interpret it. So another way also can do, using the bar graph, where this diagram, this graph shows this pain intensity, which is assessed in 3 times. For example, baseline, the second week, at the end of 4th week. So what the mean value of this, out of 100 millimeter, that's the value Michelin scale. This is 53, but at the time of third assessment, it is 20.5. So we see this, decline in, your pain intensity because of your interventions, right? So it's very, very important. Either you can use a line diagram, like a line diagram can be made using this error bar, or other way, you can also use this kind of bar chart here with the presentation, graphical presentations. Yeah, let us proceed further. So appropriate statistical test depends on study design, research question, sample size, and nature of your outcome variables. Now you should choose, you cannot choose simply like I'm going to test, but it's going to, this is going to be decided by your study design, research questions, and sample size and nature of your outcomes. So before selecting appropriate sample statistical test, you should confirm that was the sample size is appropriate or justified. Smaller sample size, because you may not produce effective results. When you want to compare with between two, or it may not spoil your resources. your time, your money, and everything. So you should have, proper sample size calculations for your statistical test. The second one, did the data meet the assumption of this test? There are some assumptions, statistical assumption should be met in your statistical. For example, there are two kind of usually we there are two kind of tests we use, parametric and non-parametric. So you need to suppose if you are choosing parametric test, there are certain assumption that the statistical tool that you're going to use should meet. If this assumption is not met by your data, then you need to go for the alternative non-parametric. If your data is or your data use the parametric test. The second one is, the third one is, you need to see this have a potential source of bias. You need to check is there any bias in this, and what is the percentage or percent. If when you presented a percentage, make sure that you mention both numerator and denominator. It's very essential. And also you should use appropriate p-value, whether you want to use a 99 or 95% of probability. So you should use that one. So as I said, every statistical test has what we known as assumptions used. So this is the types of variable that you're going to use. The impact of outliers of your data is going to affect, and also the need for the independence of observations and normality, homogeneity of variance, and sphericity. So this concept, all these items which is related to your assumptions. So when use your data, when you analyze the data, this every data should meet this kind of assumptions. So the normality testing assumed that the populations from which the samples are taken are normally distributed. So this is your normality testing, right? As I said, when you do a statistical analysis, your data should meet the assumptions. For example, here, because we measure more than 2 times in your clinical trials or RCTs. So here, so when you perform a parametric test using ANOVA, it should meet these assumptions. For example, number one assumption, your dependent variable should be measured in continuous or intervals. The second assumption, your independent variable should consist of at least 2 subgroups or matched pairs, right? So your dependent variable should be continuous, that's your outcome measures, and also your groups are more than 2 groups. And also third assumption is there is no significant outliers. There is no significant outliers. Your data should not have any outliers. So that do the box plot or normality testing with your SPSS. And also the fourth assumption is the distribution of dependent variable or approximately normally distributed. This again, you can use this SPSS as your the normality. See, it's the word. I mean, I want to insist the word here: approximately normally distributed. It means that your data never going to be a data is near approximately null. You are eligible to use parametric test. So here for the assumption for this, for your one-way repeated measure ANOVA, it should be without outliers and normally distributed. And also sphericity, again, it says you don't need to calculate manually. Your SPS will do using this Muslit. So these are the assumptions where your data should meet before applying your ANOVA, right? So this is your making assumptions. Your is normally distributed. I think it's most of us was, especially the master students, they were struggling in the go to, what is, they start like this. So they never test, they should test your the normality of your data, because they're going to tell you you're going to use metric test. It's very, very essential. If you want, if your data is normal, employing a parametric test, that's going to need your analysis, right? Then that's the issues in this. And again, when you're trying to publish this, they may not consider, you may get published in some journals, but if you want to publish in a best journal or a very high ranked journal, somewhat is very difficult. Okay, how would you assess the normal distributions? I mean, it can be, done through two methods. One is a graphical, another one is statistical. This, also called probability plot or probability plots, right? The statistical shows and kurtosis normally, or sorry, the sample data are not the normal population, right? We'll discuss this later. Okay, how would you, so when you do the normality testing SPSS, okay, PSS, the your normality testing, explore data, you can have, if anyone have a doubts, you can go to a lot of videos on this in the YouTube. So when you do this normality testing, the first one you get this table, descriptive table, right? So I made one of the anteroposterior width in the foot balance assessments. So this is what I got, the first table, descriptive table, in which you get this skewedness and kurtosis, right? So the skewedness and kurtosis, based on this, we can able to identify whether your data is not normally distributed or not. How would you do this? Okay, the first one is we need to, the statistical, this value, mean value, this statistical mean value, and the standard error. So what you need to do, this value divided by this, 2. Now, what is very important is, if your data, when you get this value, when you divide this divided value, n value, if it is lies between plus 1.96 to minus 1.96, if this value lies within this range, means your data is approximately normally distributed, so that you may use your parametric test. But whereas when you see the skewedness, it shows that the data, when you calculate this, you're getting 2.22. It means your data, it is falls away from your 1.96 plus or minus, so that it is not normally distributed, right? Okay, one more example. Here you can see this kurtosis. When you divide this, you get minus 1.03, whereas it is, this value lies within the range of 1.96. It means that based on the kurtosis, this is approximately normally distributed. The reason for this is, result which I get when I do a normality testing. This is Kolmogorov and Shapiro-Wilk. Use what? So when to use Kolmogorov, when to use Shapiro-Wilk? So usually when you have your sample size, which is less than 60 or 50, you may use a Shapiro-Wilk. Okay, so it should be non-significant result. If you have a significant results, it indicates that your data is distributed. So it's not whereas if you have more than 60 or above 100 or 200, much more, then uses Kolmogorov Sumirov test. So what is the greater than 0.5 indicates data is normal. So it should be have more than 0.05. It means that your data is normally distributed. According to this, this data, this Shapiro will, is not normally distributed. So another way of doing it is a histogram visual method. You can do this slide indicates that it's somewhat skewed towards the left side. It means visually it's not normally distributed. Again, this QQ plot also it's not in the straight line. I mean, you can see the value is scattered away from this line, trends line, so that it is not looks like it's normally distributed. Okay, so this is something, the normality statistical tool that you will employ for your study. For example, we have this continuous variable and the binary variables or categorical variables. In a continuous variable where you have two groups, okay, whereas these two groups are independent, two different groups, okay, you can use independent t-test, or they call unpaired t-test, if your data is normally distributed or it meets the assumptions which is related to independent t-test. If it is not normally distributed, you can use Mann-Whitney test. Similarly, if you have two groups which are dependent because you assess the same pair, for suppose I assess today 100 people, their fitness level, I given some intervention for 3 weeks, I reassess them after 3 weeks. I want to compare what is the state of level of changes in the fitness level. I'm going to use the same population, same sample. So I'm going to use paired t-test. If it is normally distributed, meets all the assumptions which is related to paired t-test. Otherwise, I'm going to use Wilcoxon sign test. All right. This is about the only two groups. When you have more than two groups, in general, if you have independent variables, right, two different groups, more than two groups, we use this ANOVA, one way ANOVA, or two ANOVA based on your variables. That's that's a different thing. We need to, that will take longer times to describe detail about ANOVA, different types of ANOVA. But in nutshell, if you have more than three groups, the independent groups use ANOVA. The alternative to the ANOVA, if it is normally distributed, use Kruskal-Wallis test. In addition, when you have this, the same group has been repeated for many times, more than 2 times, as 3 times or 4 times, we must use the repeated measure ANOVA, right? Repeated measure ANOVA. If it is normally distributed without outliers, it meets all the assumptions of the if it is not, if it is fails to meet those, you use this Fritzman test, which is non-parametric for the repeated measure. Sorry. And if you have a binary data, if it is greater than 2, use a chi-square, or if it is normal, if it is non-parametric for this chi-square, the Fisher exact test. If it is dependent matched pairs, then use McDermott test. So this is, give some, understanding overview of, some kind of uh, test, the statistical tool that you should employ for your study, right? So this is I think I had one more. Yeah. Yes.